Okay, welcome, welcome. Hi, everybody. It's Christina Merkley. It's another one of the process pop-ups. Pat, do you remember how many? I think it might be 15, something like that. So
This
time,
might be 16. It might be
16? Yeah. So time is flying. We're doing them about every 7 to 10 days. We've been doing them since the pandemic hit North America. And 2020 just keeps on giving, right? And all sorts of different things, not just the pandemic. Race, economy, political tensions, etc. Lots to work with if you're into doing processing. So welcome for the process pop-up. I'm going to just flash a screenshot here, or a chart, just one sec. That's what I want. And let's get this out of the way. Come on, mouse, where are you? There we go. Okay, great. So just a quick meeting startup chart, outcomes, agenda, roles, and meeting norms. Outcomes, this is just support that I'm providing during these transformative times. It's come as you are. So those of, I'm seeing familiar faces. Most of you have been here before, so you know, you show up. Who are you today? How are you feeling on the emotional scale today? All places, genuineness, authenticity across the emotional spectrum is welcome. It's a place for inner work assistance, which I think is a revolutionary act in these times to actually do your inner work. It's an ongoing community. I'm really, you know, as this has been kind of coming together and showing whatever it is to be, it keeps changing. What I do know is that I'm wanting to provide continuity and a through line through these times. So it's here. You can come and go as you like. I am also doing recorded individual sessions as well. We're up to about 30 of those. And so some of you have done those. When we're working in the group forum, there's only so much time. I like to kind of ideally split the time amongst several people. We may actually do a collaborative thing. Sometimes we do individual things. So I like to have those individual sessions as well, where I can work more in depth with one person on whatever it is that they're bringing to the table. It's a generous act because it allows other people to watch your processing and ideally parallel process along with you. So lots of good responses happening for those of you who have done that. And if you haven't done that and that's something that you're interested in doing, Pat will put the link into the chat. This agenda today, it's emergent. It's co-created, it's different every time. Who shows up is different, and what's happening in the world and how that's impacting you and what's top of mind for you is different. So that's what I like about it. It's different every time, it's unique. Also, there's I use a bunch of tools. Some of it is just spontaneous doodlings and things that I'll do on my drawing tablet here, but others are using visual tools, pre-constructed tools called visual maps. And over on the process groups page, which you would have had to have found at some point if you signed up for this somewhere down the road, there's a whole whack of visual tools on that page, and Pat's going to put that link into the chat as well. Because depending on what we encounter, I'll be using those tools and or I'll be pointing to you to certain tools that might be of help to you, you know, to kind of homework after the process group if you care to keep going with stuff that's emerging for you. In terms of roles, this is co-created. I'm holding the space, the container, I'm bringing various things. So I'm a facilitator, a visual coach, increasingly taking a non-dual oneness approach to things as I'm going through my own personal growth and development process. I have a whack of templates, like I mentioned, about 40 of them. I also come loaded with Kundalini. So my hands at times will do interesting things like different kinds of movements, and they're called mudras, kriyas. I can explain that afterwards in Q&A time. You can also search on my site and my blog. I've written quite about Kundalini. But sometimes when we hit really powerful places in the process work, my body will respond to that. And I think of that as my unconscious working with the energy as much as my conscious mind is working with what's going on with the container. So with me, you get both aspects of me, as we do with all of you as well. So head and heart, it's very holistic, the work. We will do a lot with mind and with our left brain, the wonderful cognitive and logical aspects of ourselves. And we'll also do a lot with heart, with the emotions, and with the non-linear intelligence that we all come loaded up with as human beings. Lots of ways to describe that. 3D, 5D, left brain, right brain, feminine, masculine, etc. Head, heart, gut. So just really bringing your full self. Over here in terms of ways to be for creating ideally a safe container for doing processing in. It's never safe doing live processing. All sorts of stuff can happen. So you're brave individuals for coming. Inhabit your own experience, please. It's very normal. I do it too, where we may talk in generalities. We may say you statements like, you know, everybody knows the world right now is this, this, this. And I'll just ask you to tweak that a little bit to own it. Very male, probably is that way for you. So safe bet owning it and putting an I statement on it. Because chances are not everybody actually believes the same thing you do or feels or sees the same thing. And it's also really powerful for you to own it because there's an energy shift that happens when you move from a you to an I. And also people respond differently to you because sometimes the you can feel like a pointing thing, even if you don't mean it that way. But when you say I, it changes the whole dynamics of it and people can listen to you usually better. If you need to leave, this is totally, you're welcome to come and go. I do ask that you say goodbye though, if you're leaving. If we were in an in-person group, it would be strange for somebody to stand up and leave. And I'm very aware of the container, even if I'm working with someone. Also, stuff can happen where people can get triggered or different upset can happen. And I'd like to know if that's what's going on. So please use the chat. You can write to me privately. Patricia, my assistant's here, so you can chat with Pat. You can chat with everybody who's here. So just let me know if you're leaving. So I'm like, oh, she just had to go somewhere else, or she's good, or oh, she's actually really upset and I should follow up with her. So that helps. Critiquing concepts, please, not people. We like to keep it not personal against people. This is all about spotting your conditioning and unraveling into, we could call this lots of different things, but true nature. I'm going to bow to the true nature of everybody here. We may also encounter, this is my terminology for it, your orphans and your bodyguards. And so we know we got true nature in there, and then we also have vulnerabilities and hurts that happen, which are very stirred up for a lot of people right now. My language for that is orphans. This stuff can happen lightning fast because if there's that vulnerability, a lot of us have bodyguards to protect the vulnerability. So the vulnerability stuff gets triggered. You might not even consciously be aware, and then kabam, all the bodyguards there. And if that's happening with multiple people, we can have bodyguards duking it out in the process group, which happens in life all the time, and that's what my work is about. So I'm just bringing language into this and making it okay and natural, but I may need to slow it down because sometimes that happens and it's like, whoa, I need a sec to figure out what the heck just happened. And then that's really what this is about doing our mature inner work of recognizing when we get triggered and charged. That gives us the access to figuring out what our conditioning is and where these different aspects of our consciousness are, right? Where the vulnerability is, where's the bodyguards, where's that adult consciousness as well. I'll talk in a sec about the vibrational scale because that fits in here too. But here's some other language. I'm always articulating things in different ways and finding different things that influence me. Another way to think of this is we're shifting from the trauma field to the generative field. And when you come here, you might not be in trauma. You may be very much in the generative field. You might be up there in the top ranges of the emotional scale. That's awesome. You can come to a processing group when you're feeling good too. And there's lots of things we can do when we're actually at that place, right? Lots of different processes that we can't connect to when we're in the trauma field. And if you are in the trauma field, totally okay, normal, good to do that work too. Lots of processes that we can play with there. But ideally, my work with individuals, my work with groups is to, and what I think we're all being called for, a lot of us are fellow process professionals, right, is that we're wanting to get ourselves and the people that we're working with across that line into the generative field, right, as opposed to the trauma field. So a heroic, honorable act, I think, a challenging act to be playing in this space. And I know many of the people who are attracted to my work, you are doing this too in your own ways, in your own groups, and I'm here to help and assist you as well. Okay, I think I covered that all. So let me go to, anybody has any questions about that? I think there's been some stuff going on in the chat, so I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat. Okay, cool. Good to see various people are saying hello to each other. Some of you are really getting to know each other, which is wonderful from this container and other places. Nice. Okay, let me flash real quick here the emotional scale stuff. Many of you are familiar with this, but I don't always flash it, and I'm going to do it in more depth today. Okay, this might be a little small on your screen, so let me just bring it up a bit bigger. Okay. I nabbed these from various places. So first off, the emotional scale, there's a lot of different sources for these. Therapists and counselors have lots of different ones with emotions. I went through a huge law of attraction phase in my life with the Abraham Hicks material. So this particular one on the left comes from the Abraham Hicks. My favorite book for them is Ask and It Is Given. First half of the book is a bunch of processes or concepts and narrative about the work. And then the second half is a bunch of processes. I've taken some of those processes and created tools, and I still use them in my life. I find this a very helpful thing. I'm going to talk about this in more depth, but on the right-hand side, also, the one with the Abraham Hicks, it makes it look like it's just, you know, kind of one direction. And I like this other one, and I got it off the web. So hello to, I can't read the first name, but Empowerment Guide. You did a good job with this. I appreciate your graphic. But just the idea of movement, right? That we can go up and we can go down. We can get ourselves caught in spirals. We all can see spirals going on in the world, and spirals maybe in our interactions with other people, and which way are they headed on the emotional scale, which way we are. So I just like this one on the right as just an overall concept about flow with the emotions and you know, emotional awareness, to be able to catch oneself, go within, lots of different ways that you can halt the slide, particularly if you're really going downwards, and bring some stability and even get yourself pointed in the other direction. Down at the very bottom here, these are the deepest ones where human beings turn them in on themselves and where we get powerless. This is where, with the language with orphans, that vulnerability, they reside. Okay, so fear, grief, depression, despair, powerlessness, insecurity, guilt, unworthiness, right? All that stuff that we just like turn in on ourselves, and it takes our power out. And, you know, some powers that be kind of prefer people to be there as opposed to up the scale a little bit, which is actually a step in empowerment where you move into jealousy and hatred and rage and revenge and anger, right? We're seeing, understandably, all emotions are good emotions in their context, right? So, so a lot of stuff going on in these ranges. Difficult for human beings to deal with this, and societies and institutions and stuff, right? But in the scheme of things, this is very healthy with context. Much harder to deal with when the energy's out instead of in. Then you move up into where this starts to get shifted and get a little lighter. You get into discouragement and blame and worry and doubt and disappointment. And if you'll see, this stuff is pretty medium range. Even overwhelm is pretty high there. Frustration, irritation, impatience, pessimism, boredom is actually a very high emotion. Oh, don't we look back on fondness and nostalgia about boredom. Used to have a lot of people showing up with boredom. Boredom's not showing up so much anymore in life. Now, right here is where things start to shift, and it makes a leap, and the leap is hope. When we start to get the whiff, and a lot of what I do with the magnetism map and visioning, a lot of you are strategic planner types and you're working with groups, right? And getting into vision. If the energy is real down there, it's really hard to vision. But various things can happen, and where that whiff of hope, that sparkly little stuff that starts to happen, that's amazing when it happens individually and it happens collectively. So once that hope line gets crossed, then you're really going into the stratosphere here with the emotions, into optimism and positive expectation and belief, enthusiasm, eagerness, happiness, passion. Tippy top here is joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, appreciation, right? The best things, and quote unquote, in the, I say around best, right? In the human experience. All these things are part of the human experience. They're, you know, oneness, right? It's hard. We like to play favorites with the tippy top stuff, but the bottom stuff is human too, right? Yin yang. It's we're here for whatever reasons in a dual plane. We're here playing with polarities. At least our soul thought this was a good idea. Now our physical cells has to do the hard work of being here in a non-dual plane. Anyway, there's that spiral too, right? Just to kind of, they language it different. The words don't matter. It's kind of the, you know, the gist of what those words are. Everybody lines up with words differently. But as you're playing into those words, just watch your feelings, your somatic, your body, right? Your energetics underneath it. That's what it's really about underneath, is those energetics. Okay, thanks for sitting through some of those. Most of you have heard that spiel before, but I always kind of got to do it because, you know, part of my method and my madness there is we're building container while we're doing this, and we're building shared language. We're remembering some things, and I'm talking to your orphans and your bodyguards, right? To go, I know you're there, and it's okay if you show up. And even in just addressing them, they kind of usually, like anything, when we recognize it and we treat it with respect, right, it calms down. So, okay. That's our opener. So let's find out who we are today and what's going to show up here for us to work. I never know what's going to show up, so it's always fascinating to see who we are today. And we find our way. Sometimes there's a theme. Last time we did this, there was a theme around focus, not being able to focus and do, like, wonder why. There's kind of some unusual stuff going on in the world. So we might be a little different from our usual. So that was a fascinating thing to work last time. You don't have to check in, but if you care to, name and geography. And then what's up for you? What are you bringing to the coffee table? Anything that you want to work? And I'll just take little notes here on my notepad, and then we'll find our way.
I'll jump in if that's all right.
Please.
My name is Wendy. I am in Texas in the United States. What is sitting with me right now is that I am kind of a newbie to the formal process work. I've been doing various kinds of process work without knowing what they're called for a really long time, but I'm like building my tool bag, you know, with all of the various things. And so I work for a nonprofit, and we've been struggling financially because of COVID and all the things that are happening. A lot of our in-person stuff has, you know, changed. I mean, this is not unusual, I don't think. But there are some things that are coming into an intersection of stress points for a lot of people. And so we're doing some internal organizational work, and we don't really have anybody internally who is skilled in various kinds of process and facilitation. Like, I'm kind of their best bet, you know what I mean? And I have a lot of bodyguards and orphan issues in the stuff that's going on. So I'm finding it really hard to facilitate meetings that I also need to have a voice in. So that's, and they don't have the money to hire somebody from the outside. I begged them and they don't have it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, what do I need? I don't know what I need.
Well, you need some support, so we can definitely provide some support here. Okay, great. And you know, regardless of being able to help you with intervention. That is a tricky thing, right? To try to facilitate within your own structure. Yo, yo, yo. Yeah. Okay, Wendy, thanks very much. Glad you're here. Nice to see you again. Who's next?
This is Heather. I'll go next.
Hi,
Nice
Heather.
to meet you, Wendy. Welcome. I'm calling in from Durango, Colorado. That's Southwest Colorado in the U.S. And I've been out for a while. I was traveling and going home to take care of my mom, and I was listening to the audio in the last one where you talked about focus. It was right in line. And so today I'm coming in with this, when I read the first email that I got today from you, it said something about the shift, and of course, shift at work, but I'm really interested in this shift that we're going through, and what you just said, Wendy, really resonated with me because I'm working on a new team of change management team, and people are asking for these types of things, like they're understanding that they need resources, how can we work together? And back in March, at the end of March, I really felt a sense of, and I think it's because there was a lot of language on social media around, we are in this together. And that quickly dispersed because people's values and people's needs and motivations changed. And now I feel like there are pockets of people working together again in very strong and encouraging ways. And so looking at some of the charts that you shared, Christina, I really love that planetary magnetism map. And I'm curious if anybody's using that. I'm curious if that's being used out in the world in some way, or if there could be a bigger effort around that. So anyway, I'm curious about the structures that are being really looked at in ways, right? Structures are breaking down, political, socioeconomic, racial, all of those things are breaking down and really being looked at. And what are we doing to create what we want to have next? Yep. That's what I'm curious about.
Yep, super cool. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
I can go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Jude, and I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the U.S. And I'm a little over 3 weeks retired from a long career in academia as a business professor. And I've intentionally taken these last few weeks to just rest and relax and set aside any plan of what's next. I have lots of ideas, but I'm just saying no right now and just kind of taking care of myself. And this week I also experienced some deep gratitude. I had a Zoom call scheduled with a friend of mine that lives in California on Wednesday. And a couple minutes before we were supposed to start, she texted me and said, I can't make it. My house is on fire.
Wow.
And she had just moved in November, and she and her dog were able to get out. Her husband wasn't home at the time. And later she sent photos and things, and it's a total loss, it just the house, and the fire started in the attic. So the smoke alarms didn't work.
Wow.
So I refreshed all my smoke alarms. Having that happen, within this COVID time, it just really made me step back and say, wow, how lucky she and her family were, but also how fortunate I am that even though I'm in a bubble, it's a safe bubble. So right now I'm just feeling a lot of gratitude and appreciation.
The things that are working.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's been a traumatic time, and and retiring in the middle of a pandemic has got its benefits, but it's also very strange. So, and so I think I kind of resonate with things that both Wendy and Heather have said about, kind of looking at how do we continue to process the shifts that are going around in the world, and and how can I be of service, to what's coming up in the world. So So today I'm just here to be grateful and help hold the container and process along. And I don't really have any burning issues to bring burning. Okay.
You already took care of that one.
Yeah. So it's good to be here though again. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to have you, Jude. Thanks.
This is Hannah. I wanted to say hello visually to you guys, but also I'm sort of working in the background, so I'm gonna turn my video off in a minute so it's not distracting. I just love to be in this space and the container with Christina and Pat and everybody who shows up at this time. And so just knew I wanted to be in the space, and then I didn't even come in ahead of time with the reason. But now it's occurring in hearing a few of your reasons that I am noticing all of the now individual examples that you've mentioned, as well as for some reason this past week in particular, it's sort of come into my awareness a bunch of different things, especially in the States, where there's a number of, we've got COVID going on, we've got an election coming up, things seem to be ramping up. There's even, I just heard recently about even when we do have a vaccine available, 50% of people are either unlikely or unsure to even take it. So things like that, and Trump saying we know that if he's not reelected, he won't accept the results of it. So it's going to be a lot of drama for a while after that. So just is a lot of things going on in that realm as well.
Yep.
Even after November, it's probably going to be this kind of craziness through the end of 2021. Let's put it that way. So I was originally thinking, oh, okay, another 6 months of this drama. And now I'm sort of thinking, oh, shoot, it's going to be at least another 18 months of this whole drama. And so I just, I'm partly here to soothe that, but also to just check in with the collective of how might that show up. So I'm glad you brought in the global map and that kind of thing too. How is that showing up for other people, and how can we address that? Because I'm sure other people are feeling it, even if it's not conscious yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Hannah. Good to see you.
Can I check in?
Please.
Hi, Christina.
Hi.
It's nice to be on the second process meeting I've attended. The first one was really good, and now quickly I'm at peace with what you helped me to realize. I'm not forcing any processes where people are not comfortable in their position, and just letting what emerges be more quiet. And today, I don't have also, as Jude said, like a burning thing, but things that are bugging me, as we always are, I don't know, ruminating, thinking about things. But two things that come to my mind first is that, I don't know, my personal harmony or my relationship harmony with my wife is not that good in this moment. I can attribute it, of course, from an external point of view, for all the things that have been going on. We've been in quarantine since March. Mm-hmm. So it's been really stressful with a little 3-year-old daughter. But at the same time, I'm also thinking about shift. Yeah, I think shift is also a word that relates to me, because I've been wanting to step up professionally and personally. I want to be a better professional. I've even thought about getting a coach, because I think it would help me probably to look at it from a more broader perspective, to have a vision, to set up ambitious goals. I know I can do them. I know I'm good. I know I'm creative, but I think sometimes I need probably a coach that helps me to mirror, as you did last time. I thought it was really amazing how it all pretty much unraveled. So that's pretty much it. I'm not in a bad state, but I think I'm as usual, I'm a bit uncomfortable. How are things now with my things here at home? Mm-hmm. And also because I also want to make a shift. So I probably need to step up in a few things, be in harmony, and then stepping up, because if things are not stable right now, I cannot expect that work pretty much carries what personally is not going as good. So those are the things that are in my mind right now.
There's a lot of really beautiful work that can happen with couples too, when they both do their own internal work around the shift and then come together and dialogue about it. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that to the table. Good to have you here. Something that just came to mind, because you're saying the word shift multiple times too. Several of you have referred to it. I'll ask Pat to put another link in. One of the things that got rescheduled was my Shift It retreat. I was going to be doing one in person in Mexico. And then obviously we didn't go to Mexico. Then the online one shifted because it was not the right time to run it. So August, and then IFEP nabbed one of the days that I had it scheduled, so we had to reschedule it. So I'm doing a shift. Shifted is my fuller process. In the process group here, and up on the page, I've put in a selection of tools, but they're not my whole system. And I'm running the Shift It visual coaching system in an intensive format. The new dates are August 28, 29, and 30. So those 3 days. And it's going to be 30 minutes each day. I mentioned that, Antonio, because that might be a resource for you and for others here as well. It's a way to do a deeper dive than what we're doing in the process groups, and to give you that kind of infrastructure as well, to really look at past, present, and desired future, and then do the inner alignment work that we're doing a lot of here. I've also got a sliding scale on it. I've got an accessibility rate and different things happening with the pricing than what I've done previously, to make that really accessible to people. And I'm fine with that being used in a household. So, you know, if you could buy the one seat, and then the both of you, if you want to do that together, right, you can have access to the tools in your household. So keep that in mind, and others, that it's a good resource. If those dates don't work, there's a home study kit that gives all that support as well, that you can do at your own pace. Okay, anybody else who wants to check in?
Hi everyone. I'm
Hi, Connie. Yeah, hi.
Redwoods. Hi, it's great that you started with the emotional. I feel like I'm bouncing back and forth and back and forth. There's so much to be grateful about, but school's about to start up here, and there is fear of the students coming back. We're a university that recently tipped, and now the majority of our students are people of color in a community that is extremely white without those students. And so even though all of our hotels are open and everything's open, we've got a group of precious people who have decided to do a campaign to try to close the university this year. And so, you know, I'm part of the whole state university system, and there's 23 campuses, and nowhere else is this occurring in the state of California. So, so anyway, and you know, the things that they write and the things that they say are just amazing. So I lost my temper. I just lost my temper. And fortunately, immediately a lot of allies just came and said it was really inappropriate for you to lose your temper. So that was actually a really good, because I was headed to a really dark place, and they bounced me back up. So that was rather exciting. But you know, it's just you know, as we get closer to election, like Hannah says, the craziness starts. And I'm afraid, honest to God, that people think the craziness in America is only about Republicans and right-wingers, and they're not doing the internal work of themselves, right?
Yep.
And so to a lot of Black people, we've dealt for generations with that craziness. It's the liberal craziness that really is the craziness that gets to us. And so there's a saying that, you know, I really believe this. I trust a redneck more than I trust liberal people because I know where the redneck's coming from.
Great. It's above board, eh? And they know what they are.
So when this wave of liberal people concerned about the community welfare are trying to shut down, the language they use is really loaded, and it is othering and all of that. And so anyway, that was really hurt. It's like every time I try to get to a really high place, you know, it's like boom, and then fortunately, I have people that are dragging me back, but it's going to get harder to get back up between now and November.
It's super challenging, and you're right in the thick of it, Connie. Boy, yeah. Okay, boy, we have a lot to work with, right? So it's where to go. I think everybody's checked in, correct? Yeah. Okay. I think where I'm feeling, what Heather brought forth about the kind of planetary aspect and the we nature might be a place to start. All of you have brought forward really powerful stuff. So I would also say, stick around. I may be able to do extra time today. If you haven't done one of the private sessions and you're okay with being recorded, you can also take your camera off, change your name for some anonymity. That's another way where I can work with the very important stuff that you're all bringing forward. I'm going to say a little bit about the magnetism map stuff. Let me go find it. And Pat, actually, maybe what you could do is you could go find it for me, and then you could screen share because you're a co-host. Yeah. In the meantime, I'll just do a blah on it because there's a little bit that's literal in what I think you're asking, Heather. So I can provide that about that one particular tool, but there's a much bigger thing that you're really getting to that this will probably launch us into. So for years, I have been trying to get people to do planetary and even galactic magnetism maps. The galactic is a stretch for most people, but I am very glad to see the planetary finally getting its time, right? I would say it's rare. It's leading edge to do that, but I do see it happening more than it's ever happened before. I can't tell. I put that stuff up there. I could probably go check my web stats to see what is being downloaded the most and what are people actually doing. But I think the more important thing I would say to you, Heather, use it, right? Like if you have any opportunity to use it, by all means use it. You're a certified visual coach, so you've got all the credentials to do it. And I have it also up there so anybody can use it because of the importance of these times and the importance of really going to that larger perspective. I think that's the beauty of pain and collective pain. It forces us, it's always been there, but it forces more and more people to wake up to the fact that we need to be getting into those we's. But we's are so tricky and difficult because like what Connie's talking about, right? There's lots of different perspectives in that we, and so we have to go through group process. And group process, those of us who are facilitators, we know it's excruciating, right? It takes a lot of time, and it's can be very emotional. And the beauty of working visually, like most of us do here who are process people, is it can get all that stuff up and provide out of pointing at people and getting up into the displays and starting to see it and interact with it that way. In a way, it's mass mediation work that's going on. And some of our, I do that internally with people because we have this whole suite of parts within us. And then the same thing, right? We got a whole suite of different types of personalities and consciousnesses when we're working with individuals. And then you take that up to the next level when we're working with the whole planet, right? It just is exponential. So, but that's the work, whether it's individual, group, or, you know, whole group. I think that's where we're at humanity-wise. I don't know, myself personally, I've been it's been my own unfolding path with what's happening with me with the Kundalini awakening and stuff, that is naturally propelling me into non-dual and oneness, which is as you work with the polarities and as you work with those conflicts and you bring the stuff that's unconscious, and that's what we're seeing, so much unconscious stuff that's always been there or that's been hidden is now coming up to the surface. I think ultimately that's a very good thing to have those things rise to the surface and be visible. It's very challenging in the freneticness of it in the now, but in that bigger picture, and often most of us are working with these large scrolls and we're drawing out history maps, right? Having done that so much for individuals and for companies, I trust that at the group, the planetary level too. Obviously, I'm not in control of it. None of us are. It's a collective thing, but we do have our votes, literally and figuratively, like energetically. So all the stuff that I'm trying to do with the visioning tools that I provide, that I think of that as an energetic vote, right? It just helps people get clear about what do you care about, what do you really line up with, right? As we deal with our internal board of directors and all these different aspects of consciousness, and we soothe them and work with them as maturely as possible. Out of that arises, you know, what are we ultimately about with our lives? And as we put that, I think, into the collective, that's really all we can do at one level, right? The math, I guess, will sort itself out, and that depends on, you know, where the collective is. And we can do things like I'm doing here and that you guys are doing in your containers, which are helping, not pushing and not doing it in a self-righteous way, but what is naturally there in that person's or group of people's consciousness, right? To rise to the next level, back to that emotional scale, which shows you the direction of things. Anyway, that's just my riff on what comes up when you ask specifically. Thank you, Pat. That's the group one. Yeah, yeah. And then there's a whole series. There's just, I'll rattle it off and then Pat will find the planetary one. But there's a solo one, so you can do your visioning work on you. There's different kinds of dyads, right? Different relationships with two people in them. And then there's the group one, which is here. Then this is the magnetism map. On the very first process group I did, which was a response for the visual community, and we had a lot of people show up. At the very end, we did a magnetism map. It's actually my profile picture or whatever on Facebook. And I just keep it up there because that's what I keep going to. Heather, it's good. I mean, that was 15 sessions ago, but it's still, that's where I think the power is. And, you know, do one for you, do one in your household, do one with whatever groups. I know you're working with different kinds of groups with populations who do lettering, right? So sneak that in. It's subversive, right? Sneak it in, like use it when you're teaching lettering somehow as an example, because it'll soak into people's consciousness. And then you can be really literal, like be bold. Like some people are being called to hold forums for these kinds of big dialogues and big sorting out, and which we need to do. Connie, you're doing it at your university in your local area. Many are doing them nationally in their countries or in their associations and stuff, and then globally. And depending on who your clients are and who you're playing with, I know in our suite of visual practitioners, some people are being called to hold those kinds of containers and spaces. So now, where does the power lie, which is always something that we deal with as process people, right, who are being pulled into other people's containers to run them. Do they have the power to enact change? Is the will there? Is the power there? These things are really getting, so, you know, they're systemic. And that's what we're also looking at as a world, right? And what is also bubbling to the surface, right, is where truly is power. And I believe power ultimately is in the people, of course, because we have the sheer numbers of things. But you know, how that goes in terms of how those numbers are used and the energy with it, that's what we're all in the midst of creating here. So, which can lead to revolution on lots of different levels. So I don't know, it's going to be fascinating, as hard as it is. I'm going to go back to you, Heather. So out of that, anything that you want to pick up and riff on? And then I'm just really curious, because I love that you're aware of this tool and resonating with this tool. And, you know, there's lots of other things that could be created to get to the same kind of gist. It doesn't have to be this particular tool.
Yeah, I remember that session, and after that session, I downloaded it again, and I did it for myself. And in the chat, I was asking, how can we use this? Because I have a new team that I'm a part of, and they're really well, I mean, everyone is really well positioned to actually make great change and momentum. And so I would love to share this with them and take them through the process, if you're okay with that.
Yes, please do. Yeah,
because they're ready to really enact some great change in the world. So I got excited when I went through your coaching certification process. This didn't have a lot of context, right? It wasn't relevant.
it was ahead of its time.
Right. I mean, it wasn't relevant. It was like, oh, I can see where we need to do something environmentally. You know, that was like that was it, right? So I thought about that for a while. Like, yeah, maybe I can work with people around environment. But now I think it's so relevant. And I think if we had the permission, or if we had the training to be able to use this in other ways, or if you wanted to lead something, I can almost see, I don't know how well versed you are, or if you want some support in mural, but I can see large forums of people working in mural with several of these, so that we can come together and see where do we align. I see the potential of it so much, and I know the power of this particular map. So that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, no, by all means. I mean, the thing with the maps is always like as is, right? You're welcome to use them as is.
Okay.
And if you tweak it or something, it's always nice to give credit where credit is due and source. But by all means, I mean, this is why I put this one up there along with the whack of the other ones. Is this has gone beyond me and my trademarks and my, you know, IP and stuff like that. That's why I grabbed a bunch of stuff that I know is going to be of use for individuals and to get out there and use it.
This is so generous. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Go forth. Yay. Anybody else responses to the magnetism map stuff and just to the theme of that, those collective spaces, right? It's going to be interesting also with technology. I, of course, have the niche I'm doing with technology here with one-to-one. Heather, I think you and the teams that you're connected into, or at least have been previously, I just really see them moving forward with how do we do really great facilitation of big groups, you know, online, and the technology is you know, being created through this entrance of all these very skilled people having to be forced to work online. So I'm watching in amazement and a little overwhelmed too, to go, oh man, right? But it's also, I will have to. I can't do that now. I don't know how to do that. There's so much I'm going to have to learn myself and or partner and pair with people. So I think there's going to be great partnerships that happen. And these kinds of meetings were happening in person previously, you know, pre these last crises, but now I think they're going to have to be done online for a while. And but then it always goes back to as well, what's the true agendas underneath it, and what are the true power to make an impact and make things happen. So hopefully there's goodwill there, right, where it's really true and it's really wanting to be collaborative and be open and have to work through. Again, Connie, I can just feel it with you, right? That holding space. It's really hard when you got people with lots of different points of views and philosophies and.
Christina?
Yeah, please go for it.
Yeah, no, just a small comment on when you just talked about Heather's topic. Now, in my country, at least, I also feel there's a need for seeing the whole, because here, at least, also we have a some sort of binary discussions. You know, whether you are left or right, are you with me or you're against me? Instead of having that, you know, first that awareness of the whole, but in second place, and I feel that planetary magnetism is really important to how we connect to Mother Nature. We've pretty much distanced ourselves, right. And so I think there are two levels. I think the first one, of course, is starting to see the system as a whole, and this pandemic brought us into this some sort of liminal space or liminal state. But I always think about the liminal thing of about the being on a trapeze, you know, and changing from one trapeze to the other.
Yep.
And people are pretty much holding on to that past, you know, and not making the leap. So I feel we can have a place as visual practitioners, leaders of change or whatever. How do we help in our own spaces to notice, first to view this, view this liminality, and then how do we, you know, how do we help them visualize that, first see it as a whole, and then going towards a much more awareness of us in a planet, you know. So that pretty much went through my mind when I heard Heather, and I thought, I don't know the tool specifically, but it makes pretty much a lot of sense with what is going on.
Yeah, and just mirroring, like the power of the visual to mirror back to people, and to give language to things, right? So what you've just spoken of, multiple metaphors in there. Metaphor of the butterfly, right? And the whole cocoon larva stage and gelatinous stage, which we're right in, right? And then the one with the trapeze is like when you let go of one and the other one you haven't grabbed and you're hanging midair. So then you're in the neutral zone. Bill Bridges' work is so fabulous for transitions, and but you know, for ourselves, like that's why I try to keep mirroring that back to me. And I'm working a lot with individuals, so that's often what I'm doing, or their subconscious is mirroring back to them if I'm doing inquiry, is just compassion, right? Like this is really tough stuff. We are, you know, being broken down and recreated, right? So each of us as individuals and the different things that some of you have brought that are super challenging. Connie, I'm again zeroing in on you. It is what it is. It's not pretty. It's very challenging. And there's legitimate anger, and then there's non-legitimate anger, right? Or violence, right? And the discernment between the two is really tricky. And belief systems that are duking it out, where people are very strongly in their belief system and have such compassion or such passion for that, but that belief system can be really limited. So when you're bumping up against belief systems, it's tricky stuff. So anyway, we all went for process work in one way or other, and it's going to work us, right? It's super challenging work. And now the whole world's going through it, right? We've been doing it in our different rooms, but now it's just like kaboom boomed. So now it's huge for everybody. I don't have answers, but I have, you know, just the compassion, the mirroring. And I love what you brought forward, Antonio, about the metaphors to help reflect what's going on, so others can have some meaning, you know, have some structure out of the mess to go, oh, there are processes, there are models that explain this. You know, it can be helpful. That's why we gotta love the left brain and the mind, because it's a good tool in all of this, as much as the emotions and the intuitive and the spiritual side of it is too.
So I have a question, if I could throw it out there. I think it's related a little bit with the same kinds of things. I'm wondering, what is and I know some of it is probably intuitive in the moment, but I'm curious, when Heather mentioned about people are really excited to move on and co-create something new, like that's really exciting. So how much, I don't know, maybe I like to just dig up stuff and, you know, figure out what's wrong with it. I'm concerned about causing harm if we move too quickly into co-creating something new and kind of just sweeping the other stuff under the rug. You know, like, so what's the balance there?
You want to take it, Heather? Go for it.
I'm sorry, my husband came in to tell me that I still had something in the oven, and that I meant to take it out an hour ago. So I completely missed that. I've had a hard time focusing.
It's okay. I'll take it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oopsie. Absolutely. So I would do a little bow to the part of your consciousness that just went, wait a sec, like, don't do that without context, right? Anytime a process professional is talking about their work or a certain kind of gig or group, it's very contextual. So I would assume, Wendy, you're going to be laying some of that over your particular situation, right? So I would direct you to a useful process. I've been mentioning my shifted process, which is working with individuals and visual coaching, but I would direct you, there's multiple resources, but I came out of the Grove Consultants, David Sibbett and the Grove Consultants in San Francisco. If you haven't found his strategic visioning process yet, I would point you there, because what David does and what I also do in my process, hugely influenced with my years with David. There's a lot of other things that go into Shifted as well, but in Shifted is a backbone of strategic planning and visioning. And visioning is just a component of the process. Very rarely would you start with visioning. It also goes back to what I was talking about with the emotional scale. People can't access it. If they're lower down the emotional scale, which your group is, and most are right now, good luck trying to do visioning, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to do first in order to be able to go there. If you do have a pretty stable group, then you can go right to visioning. So it's really contextual with the individual you're working with or the group you're working with. David's process is a visual process, so most people who are attracted to me are interested in visuals. And so he has a whole suite of templates, which are big in person, like the size behind me. You know, you got the wallpaper behind you, right? They're 4x8 wall ones. He also has digital versions and tabletop and individual size and all that kind of stuff. And look at that process. You're in the midst of my fundamentals, so by the time you get to the graphic facilitation segment, you'll hear me talking about it in the fundamentals, and you'll see the stuff that goes into before you go to visioning, which is you do historical typically first. And so, you know, with your organization, given what's going on, and Connie, I don't know if this might be going on in your university too, right? Whether you hold a forum for it or you do your best to do a version 1.0 of the whole historical story of the organization. The history will bring you up to X marks the spot, the now, right? And the things that we're talking about right now with all the stuff going on in our current environment, that's the now. That's the pressure cooker of our now. So there's environmental scan work that's done to really articulate and see and make visible the now. And it's also you welcome it all, just like I'm talking about with come here, come as you are. This is the way I work as a facilitator, and different people have their different values and principles, as do your clients and your systems, right? But I'm very much collaborative and very much transparent. So if there's anything in that room, it's going to go up onto the board, hopefully with balance, right? Because there's going to be different points of view up there. So these things act as mirrors. So that can be huge. That can be part of relieving pressure, not always, depending on who you're dealing with and their versions of these things. But if you involve people, most times that process of really drawing out that whole history and all those different points of view and everything kind of going up there, it's a pressure valve, and it starts to take some of the steam off. And if you truly are a facilitator who is respectful and aware of the different points of view and don't play favorites and get it all up there, people will see that, you know, you're tracking what everybody's saying, and you're not playing favorites, so their nervous systems calm down. So that's a lot of work, right, to doing the history maps. Sometimes, like, I've been in rooms where you do history maps and there was a sacred cow, or there was an elephant in the room, and then it gets all quiet, and then some brave soul pops up, right? And then all hell breaks loose. And then you as a facilitator is like, what the heck just happened, right? And then you have to do triage work in the emotional level, and that's part of the problem right now, is a lot of people aren't very comfortable with emotions, right? And to be abandon nice, tidy, strategic visioning plan stuff to really go with the emotional stuff and see it through. I've had that happen multiple times in groups. But anyway, once you make it through, if you make that through, then they're ready to go to the next stage of things, which is aspirational. Like, what do we want from here? And that too, you can have very different points of view about what is desired. But again, as an unbiased graphic facilitator, you're drawn and writing it all up and helping the group to group process through their stuff and come to decisions. And whoever is the power, it always comes back to power. Who has power, right? What are they going to do? Sometimes they do what we think is the right thing, and sometimes they do not what we think is the right thing, right? It's really a tricky profession to be in. Let me go to you, Wendy. That was a lot of stuff to just blah on the coffee table, but I'm going to assume you're going to cherry pick out the stuff that lands for you and your situation.
Yeah, and I appreciate the bigger picture there, because that was my concern. Like, oh, that sounds really great to move into, you know, visioning, but it just didn't sit with me. Like, we're not ready for that. You know, like there's a push from the leadership to move, like, okay, everyone said they're unhappy, but now we're not, so let's move on. And I'm like, no, it's not time to move on. Like, there's something else that needs to happen, but I don't have that tool yet. So thank you for pointing me at least in a direction where I can.
Yeah, and that's great. And then depending, how big's your group?
Less than 20. So
that's nice. That's good. Yeah. So it probably take you 2 days, who knows, but you know, in a typical like amount of time that a board meeting gets done or annual strategic planning, these things can get done. Of course, we're in exceptional circumstances, so you may have to add however X amount of time for the processing that happens in the middle of it, but it'll give you a structure. And you do have to kind of beg forgiveness, whatever, beg for permission, whichever side of the spectrum, to do it. A lot of people do, because of personality types or agendas, want to get to the vision, or a lot of people just want to go right to action plan, right? And that's actually at the very end of the process. So I have a lot of experience with it, so I am not afraid now to be assertive with clients and to defend the history mapping and the current context work. And I get away with it because I would say no, I wouldn't do it if I couldn't do it, because I know what happens when we try to do that. So anyway, I'm only now in rooms where I will do all the preamble contextual stuff, right? Because it's set in the container. But I learned that through the School of Hard Knocks too, with people who are like, well, come in and do a 3-hour visioning session because we need to tick off our vision. Yeah, mission statement, you see Connie. Yeah, so, but that just comes with, you know, seasoning. Like you do a bunch of, in hindsight, bonehead kind of things, but you learn through the process. So we're just kind of sharing, your instincts are right. And the growth process, I think, would be a good fit for you. And it fits in well with what your developmental curve is as well, with your visual skills. All the drawing, for the most part, the frames are constructed for you. So even if you just go with writing, or even better, do a lot of sticky note process with people, so they're writing and they're building stuff, it's not so much about the aesthetic. You can do really good visual work without it particularly being pretty. But the most important thing is to really involve people and get those points of view. And that'll be that pressure valve, like, right? So you will eventually be able to authentically and genuinely get to visioning, right? With everybody. So good luck. I think you have a good opportunity with that situation.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate because it's a group of people who already do a lot of interior work to begin with. So all that emotional stuff that's going to come up, like they're already on top of, you know, how do we have a covenant to talk about these things? And like, that's all established already. So it's really just a matter of pulling the brakes on, let's not move ahead before we're ready. It's kind of the way I'm feeling. Like, I don't
Great.
think we're ready to move ahead yet. So yeah, thank you.
Yep. Yep. We bow to that mind or whatever part of you is like going, we're not ready. They're like, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Good. Connie, I'm finding myself pulled to you. So let me go there and just see maybe different things that were said kind of were helpful or useful, and then see what's still there so we can run a little bit and provide support for you.
Well, Wendy, I wrote in the chat that, I keep at random times asking groups like, what does success look like, or aspirational questions, because we're uncovering that success, especially with some of the equity stuff that's going on, success looks different. So I was in a room recently where success for the white people in the room was getting to know people of color better.
Yeah.
And success for the people of color was like actually doing something, And so we were able to say, you guys, we're not here just so you can get to know us, like we've got to get on board in the same way. So I'm finding, or there was another meeting where the people of color were like, we just don't want to leave with our jaws locked today, And so then everybody was like, okay, that's success that we can get out of this meeting with. We'll try not to make you leave feeling more tense than you came. So just randomly, I've been asking people like, what's your intent? What does success look like when I see that tension in the room and feel like I need to lift it to try to get the power of these rooms spread a little.
And into the generative field, right? I mean, that terminology I was using at the beginning. Yeah.
So,
and are you finding that's working for you? And are you using those words up on a board or a template or something?
We've been using them. We've been using them on boards, but we've been using digital tools like Jamboard and other tools that allow everyone to write. So it's not just one person writing. And we're also. I've been saying things like we need to like create less white supremacist rooms, right? Like this room is so spacious, and bringing models of rooms that aren't spacious. Now, I'm a former mayor, so when I say white supremacist rooms, imagine me on a dais with a gavel telling people they have 3 minutes to tell me their problem or I'm going to cut their mic off. Like, could there be a more white supremacist room? So it's like, there's so many people who only know those models and aren't feeling safe to try some other models to create rooms. So I'm also starting conversations like, how do we reshape the room today?
What are you literally in room wise? Like if you're working in virtual space, is it Zoom or what are you doing? You said Jamboard, so.
Well, some of the meetings that are, I was laughing about, okay, our Zoom meetings now. We apologize for starting 2 minutes late. We have an agenda. We're trying to get through it. We're trying to get through these big topics in 1 hour.
Right.
And then we're cutting people off and then going to the next meeting. And like, it's just, by the end of the day, people's heads are exploding,
Yeah. So what's that pointing you to? So if that's what you don't want, what is that informing you? You're already starting to get it, but I'm hoping to draw it more out of you right now. Connie is going, okay, I'm learning here. I don't want this. I don't want this. Oh, I don't want that. So now that there's like a pointer going on inside you, right? A part of you is like pointing somewhere. So if we were to mic up that part, what is that part saying?
I actually
space.
you know, I think that my problem is that the language we use is so jargony.
Yep.
It really doesn't get us to where we're trying to go. So I've just been going with, okay, let me start by explaining another space to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, does that space resonate with you? So lately I've been saying, okay, why don't we change our focus? Instead of coming together and saying, how do we get more brown people into our rooms? Why aren't we setting a goal to be invited to rooms where brown people are? You know,
Mm-hmm.
why do we have to try to drag people into our frame? You know, like, how do we change our minds? So I've just been trying to flip the questions that are being asked to another question. And I've been using engagement charts. For lack of a better word, like, here's different levels of engagement. So you can think, honest to God, what level of engagement are you, whoever is asking me to facilitate, comfortable with?
Mm.
And how do I challenge you to maybe get comfortable with one more level of engagement?
And give me a sense of what you mean by engagement levels. What are you coming down to as you're explaining that?
So there's a chart that actually Sierra Foundation in California created around youth engagement that goes from youth-led to youth are just participating, you know, and that there's different, or we go hold a meeting with youth. That's the lowest phase. You know, we actually put one youth on our board. That's still a pretty low phase. You know, we actually trust youth to design. You know, you get into the higher levels. So people are not just saying, well, we want more youth. Well, how are you allowing people to enter the room? And are you allowing them to enter the room in a way that they can succeed? Or should you get your ass out of the chair or out of your own Zoom box and go and try to get permission to enter their room?
Mm.
So anyway, just trying to play with people, because I've had months and months of, which 3 brown people should we invite into our space?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes the brown people are coming in the room and they're just flipping out and walking out of the rooms. And then people are like, oh, I'm so hurt. It didn't work. Well, it wasn't set up to work. So, you know, especially on Zoom, spending more time to get everyone comfortable and build a container is so critical.
Yeah, you can see how I spend 20 minutes, right, even in this. So yeah, you really have to take time. And if you're going to do the emotional stuff, back to what Wendy was saying, right, it's like, no, we're not ready. We're not ready to go to the tactical or the planning or the other. It's like, things have to be said, they have to be heard, they have to be processed, they have to be allowed. And to create that kind of safety too, for various things to be said.
Well, and then also, you know, in a Zoom 1-hour meeting, creating space for introverts it's a challenge. You know, it is such a challenge. As a facilitator, it's horrible. I mean, you know, I just feel horrible sometimes with the lack of space for introverts.
Yeah, if we were doing inquiry, which in a way we are, we would just meet it. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, let's just welcome it. Like this, it's really hard. And there's so many different levels happening. I mean, you're even getting the introvert level in here. So it's just like, we're just like bowing to that aspect that's bringing this all forward to go, you're right. Really challenging. Yeah. It's being created too, right? I mean, you're entering into new territory. You're figuring out languaging. You're figuring out ways to reference things. This is really cutting edge, leading edge work.
I just went to someone else's meeting where they created a hallway, which I thought was a nice technique. After the meeting ended, they just left the camera on for anybody who wanted to stay and still process.
And they called it a hallway. Yeah.
And then, you know, until everybody was ready to hang up, because they were like in a meeting, we would all walk out of the meeting, or some people would stay in the room behind. So creating a hallway. So I don't know.
Yeah, the water cooler. Yeah, and let's put I don't know. Let's just welcome I don't know. I don't know, you are welcome here. It's like you do and you don't, right? There's a bunch of things you have figured out, like you're in the midst of it, and by being in the midst of it, there's these different things that you're wrestling with and trying different things and trying to language, right? Make the invisible visible and the formlessness into form. And then there's this stuff that you just don't know, and that kind of like, I don't know. And it's okay, we don't know. You don't know, and we don't know as a species too. We're all just figuring stuff out.
And you know, Heather and Antonio, it's sort of the other, like I live alone, and it's sort of like the other thing is people are coming into spaces with, you know, and with all of this other dynamic in their rooms too. And you know, and how do you, and they're trying so hard to create a bubble, like they're single, like, you know, like they're single or whatever. And it's like that's not healthy.
The whole professionalism
thing. Healthy.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's just not. I mean, I was on this wonderful Zoom meeting with first time ever. All of my first cousins have been in a space together. And one of my cousins just has a 7-month-old. And finally, it was just like, I've got to bring that baby onto my lap, you know, and it was such a, and everybody just was like, that's her, you know, she was trying so hard to create a bubble that didn't exist.
Yeah. Unreal bubbles. And you're not saying the words, but I've been doing different accessibility training, right? And a lot of stuff is around capitalism and professionalism, right? And one of the buzzwords is professional. So I'm like, crap, here I've processed professional, right? I've been using that forever. And I'm not fully bought into the whole anti-capital thing, because I think we're throwing the baby out with bathwater, but I think there's a lot of important stuff in there. And I'm hearing you say that in here, I'm resonating this whole thing about professionalism, right? Or the siloing of our beings. And so I'm doing work stuff, so I must present in a certain way. And then we're in the midst of this incredible, crazy situation, and people are still trying to like make it all like normal, right? So have your suit on. It was really cute with the, who was it? It was a GMA announcer or whatever, right? Who got caught with wearing his shorts. So he has all his tie and shirt on, and he's got his shorts underneath. And I guess the camera just kind of caught it, and it made this big stink about things. But it's so hilarious. Like, come on, the guy's a human being. He's at home. He's working under his conditions as best he can. And I think he's in California, it's hot. So time to let go of some of this stuffiness and some of the things that separate us, and the hierarchies of things and the siloing of our beings. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing anyway, and what the story that you're bringing forward in these unreal bubbles. Let's just be our more authentic, genuine selves. Takes a lot of the pressure out.
Christina, I was wondering if I could add something kind of building on what Connie was talking about. Much of the thinking I've been doing lately and participating in different web workshops has been about power in organizations and how important that is in helping to create more anti-racist work environments. And Connie, your story kind of reminded me of some of the research on power and leadership, how different the power dynamics are when someone is invited to go to the CEO's office or to the manager's office versus the manager coming to, you know, the employee's office. And so kind of your idea about creating spaces that are not white, you know, that are more inclusive, an important part of that is the power dynamic. And you know that, but I think white people, you know, we need to really acknowledge, you know, what power is at work, what power is at play when we're trying to take our space and change it in some way, rather than, as you suggest, finding ways to be invited into spaces that are already not white. You know, you guys know how to do it, right? You know how to create those spaces. So thank you for that. And I hope adding that layer of power also is an important piece to think about.
Christina?
Antonio.
Yeah, just adding up to what Judah said, I find this conversation really fascinating, and that what came up to me, I wrote it on the chat, is that a lot of people must make visible what they try to hide so hard, you know, that they're more than a person in a suit now. Instead of being in the CEOs, being at their offices, you know, suited up, and, you know, at the highest level of the building in a company, they're now at their homes. You can sometimes see their kids, you know. So we're in a place, and I pretty much agree with what Brené Brown says, you know, vulnerability and courage is part of the same coin, are two sides of the same coin. And now we're in a really good place towards changing, because we are now the most vulnerable, you know. You can see, we are transparent now. We're not entitled now to be in an office. We are now at our homes. You can see what's going on. So we're in such a good place towards change, because we are now vulnerable, and at the same time we can be courageous here right now, because we are in that place where we can shift. Again, the word shift is, is going through my mind again, but I don't know, just that came to my mind. And, you know, life and work being as a whole, again, as a system, not taking them for separate. You know, a lot of people go to their works and they go back to their homes. So they're pretty much divided. They divide it, trying to separate something that it's not divided by itself. It's just a construction of their own mind.
Yeah, so a lot of good stuff coming out of this too. That's one of them. Okay, I'm just going to go back to my list and take a look at the things, because I think we, in a way, have roamed across the territory of what people have brought forward. So I'm just going to check in on them. So Wendy, I think we gave you some support about your not-for-profit and pointing you in the direction of some processes and tools that can assist. And to Antonio's points and others in the chat there, of course, meeting them where they're at. And so as you interact with those tools, I know you and I have some private time too as part of your FIV kit. So I look forward to giving some more support as you design your approach. So that's great. Heather, it's a huge one. I look forward to what you do with that magnetism map and the other things that you and your teams figure out in creating the larger system of the planet. And I know this was going on for you with the environmental stuff, so it's super cool to hear that enlarging for you through this process and that you're still running with that. So Jude, you were here with gratitude and to support the container, so thank you for doing that. Hannah, I want to check back in with you. I'm going to go to Antonio first and just giving you a heads up. You may want to come back with your video. Antonio, we didn't get into the relationship challenges with your wife, but I did point you to Shift It. And I would also point you to some of the tools that are on that process page, the process group page. I'm not sure how the dialogue is between the two of you, if she's up for doing that kind of work and that's appealing for her. But I certainly know with couples, it helps to get both sides of it, and then drawing it out, each person doing that can be helpful, and then comparing is a place to start. And you know, using maybe that group magnetism map, right? You're skilled, you can create your own of your family unit. And what if it maybe even involving your child to some extent, right? Like, what do we want to create here? We have, we are. So that one's still in play. So certainly if you want to stick around for a little bit of bonus time, I'm happy to talk with you further about that. And or do one of the recorded sessions or take a look at Shift It. And Hannah, I'm going to come back to you if you're behind there. You had the real swirl of stuff happening with COVID and the election and the vaccines in the next 18 months. So I'm just curious of the roaming that we did on the different topics, how that is landing with your system. And you're gonna have to unmute.
It was I feel like they're on different tracks. I was really not completely distinct, but I appreciated hearing the conversations and yeah, so that's pretty much.
You're in your swirl. It didn't make a dent in your swirl. So stick around if you can. I'd like to work it a little bit with you. And others are certainly welcome to stick around too, because it's going to be a swirl that a lot of us have. Let's do a quick closing comment from each of you. And I will segue into bonus time. We'll see what the heck happens there. I'm just kind of have my feelers with Antonio and with Hannah. And luckily I get lots of good time with Hannah one-to-one. I think we got one coming up next week, so that's good. But let's do a quick checkout. And it's not like, you know, it's in process, right? So it's not like we always, especially in this short amount of time, get everything prettily taken care of. But some stuff happened here and I appreciate everybody coming. And this is what emerged today. I'm just gonna go with names I see. So Jude, do you mind if I start with you first? Just a quick closing statement. Anything you wanna say to complete today?
One of the important learnings for me is about how to create Zoom rooms that are not white supremacist. That really, and removing that sense of urgency that we have to cover everything in 1 hour, you know, and that was a really good first step. So I appreciated that learning, and I will be doing a lot of thinking about that in all the Zooms that I'm in. So
got a good inquiry focus. Excellent. Yeah, good. Wendy.
Yeah, I just want to express gratitude for the variety of things we talked about today. There was room for everybody in the space, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, good to have you here, and to be continued. We look forward to what happens with your gig. Yeah. Heather.
It was great to see everybody again. I feel like I've been really disconnected for a while, and so it was nice to see faces and hear where people were, because I think I don't know how the rest of you are, but I'm still really isolated at home, and so it's nice to connect. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Nice to connect with you. Connie.
Well, thanks. I always love this. This is such a special space, Christina, and thanks. And to Hannah's point, it's sort of like, and I think I talked to Pat in the chat last time about like maybe even a process group around all of us who are going to feel more and more anxiety as we get closer to November here.
I forgot to mention that. I am going to create those. I'm going to create a 6-month support group, several of them. So just know that that's coming. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great, because I do, you know, I think for me, it's like I feel like I'm on the track to accomplish some great things. I feel that there's some energy to tackle problems that we've gone around for a long time in the community, and yet there's this looming disaster potentially coming that could just divert all of the you know, so the bouncing between positive and negative energy is so, you know, is where the tension is here. And,
oh, that's a great point for inquiry. The loomingness, looming, you are welcome here. And then we'll see what unfolds. Yes. Yeah.
And the idea of keeping, I mean, for me, I have what I call the sense of humor meter, right? Like I just have to keep my sense of humor every day. And if the sense of humor goes down, then I really start to worry. So, yeah. So, but thanks for the space, and thanks for everybody who takes time to come here.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. Awesome. Antonio, I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah. First, well, I'm very grateful to the group, and it's amazing how different conversations can get if you just stay and listen, you know, whether you are directing it, but we're still aware of what's going on. So I'm really grateful. I love the conversations, what they came up with. So no, I'm just grateful for these kind of spaces to create more awareness and just letting the collective emerge. I think for my part, I need more of these conversations for me to also implement them in my own space. And as you just said, it's I need to work it out for my own family. It's like preaching, you know, and not delivering it in my own personal private space, which is my core. So I really need to take care of that and work on that. So I'm really grateful, and thanks for also showing me your the magnetism map and showing me those tools that maybe can probably help me out a lot and give me further tools to. For me, it makes sense visually, so I need those kind of tools to order my head and these kind of things emotionally. I was pretty illiterate emotionally when I was young. My parents didn't have any education in emotions, so I have had to unlearn.
Many of our parents.
Yeah, I had to unlearn a lot of things, you know, to eradicate anger from me and not just being a subject of it, being an object, look at it, you know. And I've been increasingly reducing my anger, but you know, we have always these kind of lights and shadows. So I'm constantly trying to work them out through visual tools. So very grateful to this space and also to the tools that you've signaled me, you know, as a beacon. So
very good. I would also direct you to my YouTube channel has previous recordings and some of the early process groups. There's one I did on the magnetism maps. That's where our Zoom bomber dropped in. And then there's also another one on orphan rescue. Those ones I'm just kind of feeling it for you. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. They're you have to go back a ways, but you'll find them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. And Renee's coming as we're wrapping up, so I'm going to guess there was a misunderstanding with the time. Hannah, let me get a closing for you, knowing we might slip in and do a little bit more work here.
Connie pretty much nailed it for me. I don't remember even her exact words, but I just sort of feel that sense of impending. I'm not an alarmist by any means. In fact, I feel like I've provided a calming role for most of the people in my life, family, friends, whatever, in both just in general, as that's, I think, who we all are in the world, in our own parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so it's striking to me that I'm kind of having this like swirl.
Yeah.
And then, so that's just.
I go there sometimes too. Yep.
And really what I want to say is I really appreciate this container, and I appreciate all of you, and it just feels really good knowing that those of us doing whatever we're doing in the ways that we're doing it all around the world. So thank you all.
Cool. Welcome, Renee. We're just officially wrapping, but we're going to go into bonus time. So we'll see what happens. You're welcome. I'll get you introduced in a sec. Pat, anything you want to say to officially close? And you're welcome if you need to take off, or you can stick around, whatever you want to do.
Well, this has just been wonderful. Just everything that was shared and kind of processed through. I really appreciate everybody coming and bringing their different views, and I just always feel better. And I did want to kind of say a plug for last week's thing, like right after we had a session.
Oh yes, yeah, you had something emerge right at the end. And
yeah, being on the other end, I've watched everybody process, and I've done an orphan rescue with her before, but this was so different. We did an inquiry, and it is amazing, literally, what happens when you're doing that. I just respect the people who have participated and been vulnerable. I see just how vulnerable you were when you were doing these
Pat's
things.
is coming up. You'll see hers in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So just anyway, thank you. Thank you for this. I love being a part.
Thank you, Pat. So love having you here. It's really precious what we're going through. We've worked together for 10, 12, something like that years. Oh, there's Norman. Feeling better, Bubba? Aw, sweet. Yeah. Thank you, Pat. Love you. Okay, so we're going to officially segue to bonus time. We might play around here with a couple of things. We'll see what happens. I'm thinking maybe an inquiry around the loomingness of the election. If you want to leave, goodbye. Thank you so much for coming. Really awesome to see you. I will figure out when the next date is as I do, and Pat will send out the maps and the recordings from today. Included will be whenever I decide to do the next one. And again, what's coming up at the end of August 28, 29, 30 is the intensive for Shifted Online. That's going to be super powerful. And then visual coach certification, there's 2 spots, maybe 1 still left in the upcoming cohort. So if you're planning, I've got like a whole whack of people I know who wanted it. So we're going to see what happens in terms of that cohort. The next cohort after that will be April 2021. I think that's what I have. And then I do plan on doing, I'm getting it more and more with hearing it a bit here and also with individual clients. I want to create a container. It will be a paid container from the fall through till into 2021. So I'm thinking a 6-month support group. I haven't written the info page on it yet. It's still in my head and I'm still figuring it out, but now I'm like, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do, because this semester is so interesting, right? I'm so used to having things structured with the school, but it's a new world and I've just waited. Also, I will be putting, one of the things we're doing is we have 3 courses that were recently ran that we're turning into home study kits. So I'll now have 8 home study kits. Wow. And once those are done, we'll do some sort of, Pat's like, wow, because she's done all the work. All those Ning summaries, that's work. I'll do some sort of special on that when that, instead of my usual summer sale, I think I'm going to focus it on the home study kits, just given what's going on in the world. Visual coach certification and Shifted are already reduced, and I've added accessibility rates as well. Okay, so that's a wrap. Goodbye, take care. And anybody's sticking around, let's, welcome to the hallway. Welcome to the water cooler. We'll just keep processing.